Hey everyone, and welcome back to the news. It has been a very interesting week already. Amazon are following in Stadia's footsteps. Yes, what an interesting move. Fallout is also continuing over Ubisoft's misconduct investigations, and this time it is hitting the lead of their big quadruple A game. Yes, quadruple A. This is one of their big hitters. It's Beyond Good and Evil 2, and it seems like things are afoot. Also, Apple and Epic are, of course, continuing to beef with each other, but Epic are now receiving backup from similarly pissed off companies. Also, EA have, let's just say there's an advertisement that's targeting kids, and it's not particularly cool, and it is for microtransactions from EA, so that's a bit rough. Now, of course, getting around companies is something that I had to do recently, and I did it with NordVPN, today's sponsor. That's available at my link, 68% off, and with your first month free. Now, why get a VPN? It's simple. Do you want to watch content from another region, on Netflix or Amazon? I had to do that recently with Made in Abyss. Easy. Just use Nord's 5,000 plus servers to choose your location and use the internet as if you were there. Nord also keeps you private. Your ISP will not know what sites you use, and that means they can't sell your browsing data to advertisers, nor can they prioritize some sites that you use over other ones. Now, Nord are a Panama-registered company, so your government can't even get to them to breach your privacy, which is very important. The app and the browser extension are super easy to use, and yes, 68% off and a free month at nordvpn.com/Bellular News. So, a big thank you to Nord for supporting our team and also allowing me to watch Made in Abyss recently, which was pretty handy. More on what we're doing with that team soon. And with that said, let's get right into the news. Let's kick it off with Amazon. Yes, a brand that I rather unfortunately have to use Nord on quite a bit. So, Amazon are getting into cloud gaming, and they're doing it with Luna, their new big service. Now, Luna will be on Fire TV, PC, Mac, iOS, and Android. Basically, right? Anything that can open up a web browser and play video. Now, it works keyboard and mouse, basically any controller, but of course they say it's best played with Amazon's own Luna controller. It's $50, basically. It looks kind of average, roughly Twitch colors, but with Amazon branding, which is a bit confusing. Now, what is super interesting to me is they are basically doing the Amazon Prime Video business model here, not say the Stadia one that was based off game purchases. So the way that it works here is that users can subscribe to a game channel for a set fee, and they've got unlimited access to all of the games on that channel. And it's just like Prime Video. So as an example, to watch the excellent show Counterpart that you really should watch, you need to subscribe to the Stars channel on Amazon Prime, and that's how you'll get your fix of J.K. Simmons. So that's how you do that. Now, of course, that's basically the model they're doing for Luna, where say a publisher could have its own channel on the Luna platform and you subscribe to that. Now, Amazon are going to be rolling their own channel called Luna Plus. It's going to have, I'd say, older titles. Examples include Control and The Surge 2, and its introductory price will be $5.99 per month, but who knows where that's eventually going to go. Now, Luna also will let you play on 2 devices simultaneously, and some titles will have 4K 60. Yes, it's not the 8K that Stadia are talking about, but hey, not even Stadia are doing that anyway, so what does it even matter? Now, apparently, there are also negotiations for an official Ubisoft channel, which, of course, as per Amazon Prime Video, would have a separate subscription fee on top of, say, the Luna Plus channel, if you were to get that. And apparently, that is going to be having new Ubisoft titles on release day, just the same as like any other platform. And overall, they're aiming for 50 games on both the Luna Plus and Ubisoft channels. We'll obviously, though, we'll just have to wait and see, like, who else is going to get on board with this. So that's essentially how it's going to work, and I will say this, Amazon have been smarter than Google in how they've set this up, because, look, Stadia, I mean, it's a load of balls, right? It's not really that great. The thing there with Stadia is they locked the optimum experience behind a monthly membership paywall that didn't really have a lot of games that came included with it, and then you had to purchase games on top of that. Stadia was the most bizarrely expensive value play and way to not go and purchase a console that I've ever seen. Now, Luna skirts around that. It kind of is basically going to be a platform that will house multiple, you could almost think like, Game Pass-like models, right, with each one being its own channel. So the way that it would work then is, yeah, like if you're a games publisher, you can just open up a channel on the Amazon Luna sort of system, which to me does seem to be fairly reasonable. Now, in terms of accessibility, it's on everything, even iOS. And you might be thinking, xCloud couldn't come to iOS properly. Why could this? Pretty simple. Amazon have said no to the App Store. It's actually just a web app that you open on your browser, which, I mean, that's interesting. And it does avoid the Apple rules that scuppered Microsoft and Google's attempts to get their streaming plays over there. So, yeah, there you go. It also might be easier for developers. We should note that it actually runs on Windows servers and NVIDIA GPUs, so there's actually no need to port games over to Linux like you have to do for Stadia. So I imagine their idea there is just that if you are a developer, it's like a minimum effort situation to actually, open up on Luna, which is probably how it should be. Doesn't really seem like it's 100% like that for Stadia. Now, in terms of other things, of course, Amazon own Twitch. So yes, there is a Twitch integration where players can actually jump straight from Luna into a Twitch stream, should they want to. Now, that is like what Stadia have sort of talked about with their Google integration, how Stadia and YouTube gaming can interact with each other, but it seems like it's just going to be a bit more direct and fast with the Twitch integration, which is interesting. It does seem like Amazon are putting quite a lot behind this, and you do just have to wonder, well, versus Google, is this going to do better? And also, I mean, it's Google. They're kind of renowned for not sticking, to projects. Now, that said, there is the bit of me that also thinks game streaming. Who the hell cares? And I know if you go to the Stadia subreddit, you'll find a curious sort of quasi-religious cult going on over there, at least in my experience, which is a bit odd. But is game streaming that much of a big thing? I mean, Strauss Zelnick of Take-Two recently said that, he's glad they didn't really put too much effort into it because it doesn't seem like a big thing. And Strauss was just saying, look, people are paying $60, $70 for games. Of course they're going to get a console. And you know what? Yeah. Strauss is probably right there. I just right now don't think the game streaming is going to be a massive thing unless you're doing it in the Microsoft way, where it's an additive part of an experience you're already likely to pay for. So that's the streaming. Let's move on. Oh boy. So Michel Ancel, the creator of Rayman and Beyond Good and Evil, has retired after 30 years. What a great career. That's how Ubisoft sort of framed it last week. But it seems like that's not necessarily the case. So Ancel, announced on his Instagram that he was leaving to pursue his second passion, wildlife. Well, the French newspaper, who broke the previous Ubisoft stories, has suggested that his departure is actually something that followed an investigation into his toxic leadership by Ubisoft themselves. Now, the complaints supposedly relate to his leadership on Beyond Good and Evil 2, where he allegedly has caused, and I quote, an unusual amount of exhaustion, depression, and burnout among staff. And there's a lot of examples here, right? There's things like he sort of needed ideas to be his, so he wasn't really listening to people in the team. He would rather improvise alone than listen to his team. That's another complaint. He could call you a genius one day and, something significantly less charitable the next day, let's just say. And just having countless iteration with little rationale, seeming like the project was going nowhere fast, was causing a inordinate human toll on the staff who were working on it, with a lot of that stemming from subpar leadership. So that's what they were alleging. But the odd thing here is that he was actually interviewed for this article. And that is where it gets kind of interesting. Now, his responses were far more focused on the, you could say, general challenges of building a game as ambitious as Beyond Good and Evil 2. Now, it of course does look real bad for Ubisoft when, according to translations, he openly suggests that a quadruple A, and by the way, we still don't know what quadruple A actually means, even though multiple groups like Microsoft and, Ubisoft are sort of doing that. We don't know what it means. But yes, he openly suggests that a quadruple A game is just so complex and ambitious that burnt out staff isn't surprising. And according to one translation, he even mentioned them burning their wings. So yeah, nothing like an Icarus metaphor to, set up what they're trying to do, which I'm sure Ubisoft are not particularly happy about because, well, it didn't really end that well for Icarus in that story, did it? So, a bit weird. Now, clearly something is going on with this project. We've had little bits of information about it, yes, but it's just, there's not been sort of big reveals or anything like that. It's clearly been this long way off AAA project, a lot of mystery. So clearly something is up with this project. I mean, it had seemingly not been going anywhere fast, and now its lead and apparent vision is gone. Now, he definitely is a man who seems to have wanted to go on his own terms. He really has been proactive in trying to get his own sort of side in on all of this messaging, where he suggests that the article takes the, quote, rage and jealousy of a few people and blows it out of proportion. And he claims that he actually can't be accused of toxic management because he didn't manage the teams. He just, quote, brings a vision. I don't know. It's odd. Like, all of that stuff just sort of screams as, you know, inflated ego ideas man running over everything when you're talking about bringing the vision. But I don't know. I wasn't there. Now, he does continue to say that the article is full of, as he says, fake information that was given by people who want to, quote, destroy himself and the project. Now, he seemingly has had a good enough reputation, sort of publicly in the industry for years, so this whole thing happening is certainly a bit of a surprise to me, but the timing of everything is certainly mighty suspicious. It's lining up with staff within Ubisoft clearly feeling like they can actually speak up if they want to. So right now I'm going to say there's a lot of stuff that, you know, it smells, right? It doesn't smell good, this situation, does it? So I imagine we're going to find out more. But for now, if you were extremely excited for Beyond Good and Evil 2, you know, maybe take a second thought about that. Next, it is time for the Coalition for App Fairness. What is that? Well, it's of course something stemming from Epic's ongoing legal battle with Apple. And of course, Epic are not the only company who are a bit pissed off at how the App Store is ran. So, this newly formed Coalition for App Fairness unites several companies. It's got 13 founding members. And basically, if a company's had a bit of a spat with Apple in the last few months, there's a decent chance they're going to be on this new group. So members include Epic Games, who of course have not had a great time with Apple, Spotify, who also are a bit pissed off over Apple Music, Match Group, who operate Tinder, and there's others. Proton Mail CEO is there. He believes that Apple are holding devs hostage, as he puts it, with a 30% fee. Then Basecamp slammed Apple's exploitative, as they put it, policies after an app update was basically blocked because they implemented the same non-Apple payment scheme that Netflix uses in their app. So yes, appfairness.org is the site, and it explains the coalition's opposition to what Apple is doing. And I mean, it's basically the usual stuff, right? That, you know, Apple stores and just Apple's practices are favoring their own versions of apps over competitors, that the App Store fee is unfair, and that Apple's ban on competing payment methods and app stores is not a thing that should be okay, that it's anti-competitive. Now, this coalition is arguing that Apple are, in fact, when they take the 30% commission, charging 600% more than a credit card company who will take a 5% cut, and that they want enforcers, regulators, and legislators around the world to recognize that every developer is entitled to fair treatment. And that certainly is a big statement, and I will have a bit more on that in a second. Now, this coalition are probably, I'd say, making a bit of a mistake in using the payment processing fee argument that Epic started. You see, the thing here is the value of Apple's part in the whole process is undeniably more than just being a payment processor. They have built the phones, they have built the stores, they have built the support network, blah, 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 the custom chip development, the APIs, etc., that all of these developers are using for their applications. So I think it would be unfair for Apple to only take a payment processing fee. I just don't think that would accurately be capturing the value that Apple is offering. Instead here, I think what's actually happening is these companies are displeased with a number of Apple's, I think, a bit more sketchy business practices, and then also just the fact that, yeah, they've got to pay 30%, and hey, why would you pay 30 when you could pay less? Certainly that's what a lot of people publishing on Steam will be feeling when they look at their revenue, look at what they actually get from that, and then try to run, say, oh, if this was $88.12 in the Epic Games Store, what would it be? But of course, it just is that thing where payment processing, if that's like 2.9 to 5%, how much on top of that is the value of what Apple is actually providing? What should their commission be? If you look at the Epic Games Store, clearly Epic Games are saying that, well, they're, few percent of the 8812. Of course, the 12 is what Epic gets. A few percent of that 12 is customer service. It is things like, payment processing, and that they do have their own bit of, commission, right? Their margin on that. So how much do you think is fair? What is fair for being a middleman? It's a bit tricky. And then I think this is where the coalition could make a better argument, which is if it was possible for there to be more middlemen, more app stores, then there could be more competition over the commission. And then the fundamental difference would be that on the Windows PC platform, you can go with the Epic Games Store, you can go for Steam, or you can go for the Windows Store. And I think that's something they would probably like to be mirrored over on iOS. So do you think that is something that should happen? And what do you think is a fair commission past the point of payment processing? Let me know down below. Well, next up, we've got EA Games and, well, the kids. So EA have been fiercely criticized for an advert that is promoting FIFA microtransactions to kids. So basically, the latest in-store catalog for the UK toy chain Smith's Toys contains a 4-step guide to creating your ultimate team, where of course step 2 is to use FIFA points to open packs. Now, this is reportedly the second year in a row that the points have actually been promoted in the catalog. Now, EA is getting all of the flack for this. Is that fair? We do not know. It doesn't seem like EA would be making this ad copy, right? I don't think that would be the case. So we just don't know if EA had any hand in this promotion or if this was a decision purely made by Smith's marketing staff. But the ad is, technically speaking, what it is doing, it is promoting FIFA and PS Store credit together, which obviously is what Smith's would want to sell. Either way, though, it's a bad look for EA, and you do have to wonder if they should have some sort of policy against sales tactics like this, because people are, I think, rightfully upset about this sort of thing. I mean, this is a Toy Stores magazine specifically aimed at kids. It is aimed for younger audiences. It's not like an Argos catalog or something, for sticking it within the UK. Now, this could easily be viewed as an attempt to normalize these in-game purchases for a young audience, which obviously most of us are not cool with. I mean, telling kids that the right way to play FIFA is to, get their parents' wallet. Is that something we're okay with? I don't really think we are. Now, the argument here then is that the, EA and Smiths, I suppose, are trying to get people hooked while they're young. And this all ties into, of course, the UK government, what they've been looking at when they've been trying to hunt down loot boxes and gambling and, all of that stuff. Overall here, I'll say this. Do I think that EA actually said that this is how their game should be marketed? No, I do not. Do I think that EA is perfectly fine with kids getting their mum's credit card and using it? Yeah, I think EA are probably fine with that, even though, yes, if push comes to shove, maybe they'll give a refund if something egregious happens. But are they broadly okay with profiteering off this kind of thing, which they know happens to a younger audience, especially given the, the PEGI rating of that game? Yeah. So if EA were to actually have maybe some balls here, I think what they should do is say, hey, in anything that is, that is targeting children, do not push the microtransaction angle. Now, you could argue that's just brushing it under the rug, but I think for now that's probably a policy that would at least be pragmatic for EA so that they actually get flack like this off their back, which of course is good for them, which is maybe bad for us, but it is probably the thing that they should pragmatically do if they don't want to have more PR disasters like this one. And next up, the $200 Xbox Series X expansion that has got people talking. So, Microsoft confirmed that the official 1TB storage expansion card for the Series X and S will cost $219.99. That's bloody expensive, but there is actually a reason. So it's a Seagate-made proprietary card that is basically replicating the, as they sort of brand it, the Xbox Velocity architecture, which, yes, will enable its faster load times and other fancy things when you're on your next-gen consoles. Now, that is something where it is just a more bespoke form of storage. There is more bespoke hardware there. And it's also something where, is there much competition in that market for stuff that is Xbox Velocity architecture? No, there is not. So yes, I mean, if you look at the most expensive forms of SSD you can get, you will start to see markups that are a bit more like this. If you look at a you know, a SATA, a cheap SATA 1 terabyte SSD, then yes, this will look humongously overpriced, but there's a lot more than just it being an SSD and it having a size. SSDs are, you know, in sort of many different ways, you know, from your SATA ones, which really aren't that fast, up to your PCIe ones, which are blazing fast, and then any specific hardware that is implemented via the Velocity architecture or the PS5 is doing to basically allow that thing to absolutely cram the RAM full at seemingly record speeds. Now, the thing here is that, you know, your external hard drives can be used, but next-gen games will need to be stored on either the console itself or this Seagate sort of Xbox Velocity architecture card. And that makes obvious sense, right? Because all of those games are going to be developed with the base assumption that they will be on something that has the specifications of, I guess, something that's got that Xbox Velocity architecture tick of approval. Now, what I would really like to see is a group like iFixit to actually get these consoles, to tear them apart, and for us to actually see what custom hardware is there. Like, is this just, you know, a fancy API and some really fast, you know, PCIe storage? Or is there, you know, is there specific hardware there that is doing, you know, I don't know, game-specific things that are dealt with in maybe the API that, you know, they've made to hook into Xbox Velocity architecture? You kind of get my point, though, right? I want to see hardware teardown so I can actually judge to what degree this is something new and cool with a justified price, or if it's just, you know, there not being that much competition in the market. Now, Xbox did say that they will continue to invest in the expandable storage space with the goal of offering choice to Xbox fans. That's their quote. So yes, probably more capacities, more like third-party solutions, but it is expensive though. We can't get away from that. I mean, an Xbox Series S and a 1 terabyte card pushes the cost to nearly the same as an Xbox Series X. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit weird, like, 500 gigabytes more storage is what that combination would be, right? Because the Series X is 1 terabyte by default, whereas the Series S is 500 gigs. So 500 gigs of storage, but, you know, you're not going to have the most next-gen performance. I know a lot of people have been pretty angry with how I've categorized that. What I would say, though, is imagine if you had a budget Xbox One when the Xbox One came out, where people were saying that this is the 1080p Xbox One, and then track that forward 7 years, right, which is the life of one of those consoles. It just seems to me like if you're getting the Series S, are you always going to be using a 1080p TV? Like, are they really a thing that's commonly made in most primary markets now? Like, I think most new TVs that are purchased are probably 4K, so I just have to think about it from that future-proofing angle, and if the lifetime cost of ownership is actually going to be lower for somebody who just gets a Series X, and pretty much that's it, they're done, they're happy. But again, we'll just have to see how, you know, frame rates actually scale as we move into the next generation. It's great to see a lot of the companies like talking about performance and frame rates and input latencies, especially Microsoft. But for me, that question is always going to be, sure, it might be fine at launch, but what happens when 5 years passes? These games are, you know, running in what the NVIDIA, you know, 5000 series of graphics cards, and now the console games are trying to look better and better and better to compete. Will they still be hitting the frame rate targets that we would have expected at launch? Hard to tell, and I think we all know based on past console generations, yeah, you know, those frame rate targets and that choppiness, it just kind of sneaks in more and more over time. So that's my Series X versus S thoughts. But yeah, what do you think about that pricing for the storage? Do, of course, let me know. And that is, of course, it for the video. So NordVPN, hit up that link down below, supports the channel and gets you access to a fantastic VPN for, you know, dodging around the world, all your VPN needs, which of course for me is primarily going to be watching content on streaming platforms that's not available in my region. I mean, certainly once you get access like Japanese Netflix, it's a pretty different situation to the one we get in the UK. I mean, hell, even the US one's got a fair bit more than the UK one. Not bitter at all. Anyway, that's it for me. Thanks to you for watching. Thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring. And with that said, I'll see you next time.